Hello, everyone. Welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Jim Powell, Editorial Director at TDWI, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about 6 signs your organization needs embedded analytics. Our sponsor is Wine Enterprise by Grape City. For our presentations today, we'll first hear from David Stoddard with TDWI. After Dave speaks, we have a presentation from Kelly DeSantis with Wine Enterprise by Grape City. Before I turn time over to our speakers, I'd like to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long. At the end of their presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. If at any time during their presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question and send it over. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, click on the Help area located below the slide window, and you'll receive technical assistance. If you'd like to discuss this webinar on Twitter with fellow attendees, just include the hashtag TDWI in your tweets. Finally, if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, use the Click Here for a PDF line there on the left middle of your console. In addition, we are recording today's event, and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later if you choose, or share it with a colleague. Okay, again, today we're going to be talking about 6 signs your organization needs embedded analytics. Our first speaker is David Stoddard, Senior Director of Research for Business Intelligence at TDWI. As an analyst, writer, and researcher, Dave has provided thought leadership on key topics in BI, analytics, IT, and information management for over 2 decades. Previously, Dave headed up his own independent firm and served as Vice President and Research Director for Ventana Research. He was the founding Chief Editor of Intelligent Enterprise, a major publication and media site devoted to the BI and data warehousing community, and he served as Editorial Director there for 9 years. With TDWI Research, Dave focuses on providing research-based insight and best practices for organizations implementing BI, analytics, performance management, and related technologies and methods. Dave, I'll turn things over to you here.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thanks to everyone who's joining us today. Hope you're all having a great day out there, and thanks for taking the time with us. And also thanks to Wine Enterprise by Grape City and to Kelly for being here. So we're going to talk about a topic that we see often in our research as being very important, which is around embedded analytics as a way to expand the impact and make it more possible for organizations to be data-driven in a more widespread way. So I'll be going through some of the issues, and we have 6 that I'm going to talk about. This is all based on a checklist, so I'll be providing some information about that a little bit later too. So to get started, though, so I'm going to just talk about some demand drivers and really some of the things that are driving it. And demand is rising for business analytics. I'm sure that that's no secret out there to everyone. And but it's just interesting to sort of think about it and look at some of our research around it, that it really is no longer a nice to have. I mean, it wasn't really all that long ago where analytics was kind of a specialized part of organizations. Maybe you had some data scientists kind of off somewhere working on some almost science projects. And but now it's really moved beyond that to where really more and more people in organizations, executives, managers, want to be working with data to use analytics effectively. And it's really across industries and key business functions, as we see in our research. So 3 top areas that it's really affecting are operations. So 53% have already deployed advanced analytics, and some of the key areas there would be customer service. As you can see here, the number 2 really is marketing. So anything having to do with customer-facing, involving customer data, this, of course, is often the very first place that organizations begin to deploy analytics and really try to understand customer preferences, their behavior, what's influencing customers, and a lot of these things can be read out of the data that they're collecting from different sales channels and marketing campaigns, and particularly as the number of channels increase, we've got a lot of organizations with multi-channel kind of scenarios. They need to begin to gather data and get a single view of customers and what's going on there. So customer service, marketing, sales, some of these areas, improving campaign decisions, improving sales funnel analysis, salespeople themselves getting much more kind of data-driven, and they want the input of the data. And so these are all the kinds of users that really typically don't have standalone BI systems. They have applications or today cloud-based services. And so they're looking for more BI visualization kind of functionality, analytics in those. And just to finish out some things on this slide, so finance also a driver, performance tracking, pricing strategies, forecasting, all of these kinds of things as well, that they may have applications that are delivering the data, but they don't have very good data visualization, and analytics tend to be kind of primitive. So it's about democratization, broadening that demand for, really answering that broadened demand for analytics, the need for interactive dashboards, so things that are not just canned reports. Of course, in a lot of cases, users are working with spreadsheets to do some of their analysis, and spreadsheets can be great for a lot of things, but as you get more advanced and want to use more kinds of data and also be more collaborative in the organization, spreadsheets start to show weaknesses. And so organizations then can't really keep up with the demand through the slow standalone self-service tool deployment. It's just not working for them. And so embedded starts to be something that they're looking at is how could that work? And so the simple definition is pretty much just putting analytics in an application. So a business application, and it's analytics, so it could be the results of a modeling that data analysts and data scientists are doing. Excuse me, but it could also be visualizations like dashboards. So basically putting a point of delivery for all of this, the data, the feeds, different types of data sources coming in to make it more available and accessible and be able to do that kind of analysis. So putting all of that in the business applications that, say, finance or campaign marketing or sales are using, that kind of functionality into another application or process. Now, there's, of course, a big range of things that can be done there, and it could range from just improving the reporting, because a lot of business applications come with some kind of reporting or even dashboards, but often it's very limited. Not a lot you can do, not a lot of data sources it can support. You want to get into deeper kind of analytics, run into walls. And so there's, in other words, quite a spectrum between just improving upon those more simple reports with better visualization, which is it's a big deal, just to have better visualization and better choices of charts and so forth, to more advanced analytics, more sophisticated analytics. And, of course, now we're beginning to see beyond, just kind of online analytical processing kind of functionality, but really into predictive analytics and bringing to look at AI and machine learning, how that could contribute and so forth. But, of course, the biggest chunk of users are really just trying to get better than spreadsheets and just sort of simple reporting. So addressing the needs of more of those types of users who, in many cases, do not have the skills and the time and the interest. They don't want to go start learning BI. They want to just keep doing what they need to do. So they're not interested in those standalone dedicated tools. However, we do see that in our research, we asked, what would help right now to improve your success with BI and analytics? And 28%, which is pretty good numbers, said that embedding would immediately improve that success. So it's something they are looking at right now. And then the other thing about embedded is that often we think about it as third-party developers, and certainly this is a very important topic for third-party developers who want to improve the applications that they're developing and taking to market, but it can also be done by in-house developers as well. And we'll talk about that as we go along. So the potential, three big things. Making data insights more pervasive, actionable, and valuable. So this is the idea of trying to get to more data-driven actions and decisions in organizations. So this is where it gets popular to embed the dashboards as a starting place, embedding dashboards into operational applications. So as I mentioned, the customer-facing sales and support, monitoring what customers are doing. I mentioned HR, just trying to get better idea of candidates out there. What are some of the patterns in terms of hiring practices and patterns, adhering to regulations and so forth. Often it's becoming much more sophisticated in terms of the reporting and auditing that's required, so they're needing better kinds of tools to work with. embedding analytics in websites. So this is where you get into that more customer and partner facing. And so we see particularly in supply chains and trying to link together, providing better services, and I'll be talking about more of this later in the presentation, to partners and so forth through things like supply chain portals. And then often the more advanced is about embedding in systems. So this is where you get into analytics embedded in a credit card system, for example, to do fraud detection or maintenance kind of analytics, particularly around with IoT and sensor kind of streams. Those are often very specialized data sources, and you might be doing specialized kinds of time series or other sorts of analytics. And the application that you might have, it doesn't have any kind of capabilities in that area. So you, rather than, again, go to a standalone tool, try to bring it in and integrate it more tightly with the processes, the decisions that need to be made within that application. So, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different options. Okay, before we go further, it'd be great to hear from our audience to see what is driving your interest in embedded analytics. And so here's a poll question we've got, so if you could make a selection here. Is, I'm sure in some ways all of these are driving it, but which one is really the top of mind, the most important? So is it we want to operationalize analytics and visualizations to improve daily decision making? So it's more on that kind of end. Users want dashboards and analytics in context rather than in a separate system. So as I mentioned before, they don't want to go to a standalone system. They want to do it, have it inside the context of their application. Total costs, TCO is high with standalone, and with standalone BI and analytics, and you need an alternative strategy. So we talk about that a little bit later. We want to monetize data and analytics by embedding in partner and customer-facing applications and services. Another thing I'll be talking about in a little more detail later, or other. And so as we get to the Q&A portion of our webinar, we could talk about some of the things that you might provide there that I don't list here in our questions. Okay, let's see what the response is. And wow, interesting. So a big percentage, we want to operationalize analytics and visualizations to improve daily decision making. So yeah, and I think that jives with our research that operationalizing and improving operations is really the number one reason why organizations are trying to look at or trying to deploy embedded analytics. But we get here almost a quarter saying users want dashboards and analytics in context rather than a separate system. So again, that kind of goes along with the first one. You're operationalizing, so you don't want to have to step out to a separate system. 14.3% does say that they're looking at a way to reduce costs, particularly as they try to do more instances of standalone systems. The same percentage wanting to monetize data, and great, we've got some answers provided in the Q&A, so we'll look at those a little bit later. Okay, so I'll talk through my 6 signs your organization needs embedded analytics. So first is around digital transformation. So this is where organizations are trying to replace those legacy systems, and most large organizations in particular have big applications, business process systems that they've been using for decades sometimes. And now we're at a stage, and we see this more and more in our research as well, that particularly with the cloud as an option is, can we move these to the cloud? And in the process of doing so, can we modernize all of our processes, applications, services, and consider this idea of integrating BI and analytics more effectively? So a big driver there is often around using data analytics to drive efficiency and resiliency in these digitally transformed processes. So benefits sought, deeper insights. So had these applications, they run, often the other definition of legacy is it works. And this isn't working, but maybe not providing any kind of data insights that you really need in a modern kind of decision-making organization. So deeper insights, increased productivity, because often these things have become kind of kludge-like, where there's a lot of workarounds to try to modernize a little bit, piece of it here, a piece of it there to address a particular need at that time. Well, this is a way to begin to systematize it so you can increase productivity, improve customer service. I'll talk about that a little bit later. A lot of times when digital transformation is going, it's often, well, it can be often be around the sales support, customer marketing kind of things, and so touching a lot of customer data, so need to improve, say, a call center, a contact center, want to improve customer service by making it more data-driven. So that's a big motivation for digital transformation in many cases. And then greater profitability, and being able to use data analytics to identify where you could become more profitable. So some of the signs that you need embedded analytics: need to make analytics available to more users, because often in the digital transformation, there are going to be more users who, or you'd like there to be more users served by this system, rather than just specialists. More users want self-service data interactions, so they want to be able to do more on their own and not be dependent on IT. So again, a reason to embed it in the application, not have to force those users to go to IT to get any kind of functionality. More customer touchpoints demand data-informed response. As I mentioned before, a lot of times the digital transformation is aimed at the kinds of applications that do have customer touchpoints and are collecting customer data. Now, one thing about this that's important to consider is beyond technology, which is that if you're digitally transforming, then you need a data-literate user base. And so we're going to talk a lot about technology and deploying systems in this webinar, but don't forget that you need to start to think about the human-centered issues, and this is where data literacy is important. So just a quick definition, basically around how well users understand data, understand visualizations, analytics, and can share them, so they can collaborate and share them with others effectively to achieve results. And so there's a lot of things that organizations can do, and we, of course, see in our research, not surprisingly, 65% is in training. They want to improve training, so this is the top of the list of the most important things they could do to improve the data literacy of their executives, managers, and frontline personnel. But you can see here on the other items on the list, the culture. So culture is key, 62% supporting a culture of data curiosity and critical thinking. We often see that in our summits and our organization and in our research as well, that that's an issue, is that they, you might be beginning to deploy BI and more advanced analytics, but often the culture of the organization isn't really receptive to new ideas, innovations that could happen. Everybody wants to kind of do things the same old way, and so it's difficult. So there needs to be some thought given to that around improving the culture. And then some other things around making it easier to access and interact with data. So this is something that Embedded can address. Improving data quality, so we'll be talking about that later. Identifying where data use, analysis, and sharing could be better. All these kind of things are contributive to data literacy. So think about all of those things as you're thinking about it, not just the deploying technology factors. Okay, number two, and this really often, as we saw in our poll there, is top of the list and kind of goes along with digital transformations. You need to improve operational excellence. So goals of continuous improvement, and often this is very difficult in organizations. How can you look at what's being done and then take steps particularly to reduce risk, to lower operating costs, and to increase revenues? So can we examine what we're doing in operations to just do it better, be more efficient about it, be more effective about it, address both competitive risks and other kinds of risks, but often they don't have the data, don't have the access to the data, don't have the visualizations that we need to be able to understand quickly what's going on. Here we're just borrowing a definition from the Institute of Operational Excellence, where each and every employee can see the flow, and this is an interesting one when we think about customer data, can see the flow of value to the customer and fix that flow before it breaks down. So often that's around that kind of outside-in focus that is difficult to get in organizations to understand how does a customer see us? How are they experiencing their interaction with us? And so those are parts of operational excellence that are important to consider, and often there's not good data for that kind of analysis. So signs that you need embedded analytics for improving operational excellence. You need analytics, to improve operational processes. So you need analytics that are really devoted to those processes, and this is, again, where we get to the problem of often analysis, BI, too standalone, kind of apart from the operations. You need analytics that are dedicated to particular operational processes where the data is relevant to those processes, drawn in there, And so there's not that leap that you have to go through. Need better visibility across the organization. So you need it for the individual processes, but you also need to be able to see across. So get to be able to see data, insights, and context, but then particularly executives are constantly asking for the big picture view. They want to be able to see across the organization. They want to manager specific operations. They're focused on one area, but it would be helpful to them if they could see what's going on in other subsidiaries, departments in the organization, be able to work collaboratively across the organization. So those are some of the things that are driving it. So some of the success factors for achieving operational excellence. Number one is data integrity, because of course if people can't trust the data, that's going to bring it to a halt immediately. So you got to think about higher data quality, govern data to make sure that you're adhering to regulations and also internal standards for the data. Do things that can eliminate the confusion about what the data means. And this is where things like data catalogs and just having a semantic understanding of data definitions, bringing those definitions together to make sure that they make sense together and don't conflict is very important. Ability to integrate data from multiple sources with different formats. So again, having the back-end supportive systems that can handle that, not put all that pressure on the users to try to sort it out. Authorizations, so authorized access to analytics reports and dashboards. So as you're operationalizing, adding new kinds of users, have to start to think about, well, really at the very beginning, it kind of goes along with governance to be thinking about security and authorization to make sure all of that is in place. And then think about actionable analytics, actionable visualizations. Is what the BI and analytics report, the dashboards and so forth providing really helpful in making decisions, or is it just sort of interesting information? So again, tightening that connection, providing the visualizations in a way that allows users who are not super experienced to pick up what they need to know and be able to apply it to decisions and actions. So again, I talk about the continuous improvement idea. You need feedback loops to ensure that the analytics are valuable, to be able to sort of check on that often. And as I mentioned before, seeing it from that customer, the outside-in perspective, that's where the feedback loops are often very important, to be able to draw information around how are people using, say, our website, are they getting the information they need, that kind of thing. And do we have a feedback loop that can help improve so we can optimize as we go forward? And then manage those cultural issues I mentioned around data literacy. Again, this is very important to prepare for change management. So if you've come up with an innovative idea or adding new data sources, help everyone adjust to that change, because everyone gets in their comfort zone and often needs some, kind of human-centered help around change management. Okay, number 3 is the need to improve customer engagement. So as I mentioned before, particularly around operations, it's the customer stuff that's often the first place, particularly for analytics. And even in digital transformation, it's those applications and processes that are often top of the list as organizations want to improve their support, their sales, their how they're marketing. And so customer focus is key to competitiveness, understanding customers, providing those customers with the best experiences. And then it's not just in marketing and sales. It's often forgotten that, marketing and sales is often just kind of at the end of a long product or service development process, other kinds of processes that engage customers around support, field support, how the company handles warranties, for example, or something like that. And so make sure that the customer focus extends throughout so that you're seeing other parts of the organizations enlightened by what you're learning through analytics around customers. Analytics revolutionize customer insights. So it's a competitive issue in industries to be able to understand customer insights, and so you need ease of use. It needs to be in context. You need visibility into that customer data. So these are some of the things that are key that embedded analytics can provide within a marketing application or within a customer service call center kind of application. And some of the signs that we see that organizations need it, they can't keep up. Teams, project teams, analytics teams, BI teams that are empowered to develop these systems, they can't keep up with line of business requests. There's daily fire drills, and certainly in the last year in the COVID pandemic, couldn't be more true. As we see in our research, more than half of organizations reporting that they haven't answered all kinds of new questions around their operations, their processes, what customers are doing. They see, of course, demand changing tremendously in the last year, and so they can't keep up. So it would be good if users could be doing more, and then if it were more in context. And then management wants better customer experiences. So this is a top objective, a performance objective, starting to assign metrics to it, and need data to supply that. But they're often dependent on manual work, and this slows time to insight. So they're not, and often there's a lag between collecting the data and getting the analytics, so you don't even know whether it's accurate anymore, particularly during the past year when things have been changing so much. So some of the success factors around this area, with the focus on improving time to insight and helping to increase understanding of customers. So you need clear design. This is where visualization, good visualization, is very important. So clear, intuitive dashboards and user interfaces, so users can share their data measurement concepts. This is the kind of stuff that can really slow things down, slow down the actionability of the insights. So use good data visualization principles. Use often lunch and learn. Of course, it's hard to do, but we can do it remotely, certainly. In fact, sometimes maybe it's even easier to do kind of data visualization, show examples, and use Zoom effectively and things like that to show what's working in different parts of the organization. Share that stuff. Very important. Example, bank embedding analytics in customer-facing application. Can they understand what can the customers understand what they see? Can you see that outside-in perspective so that you can do that kind of continuous improvement loop? Aim to increase collaboration. So yes, and to do that, you have to know your users. So developers of these systems, whether they're third-party or internal, need to sit down with the users. What embedded analytics, what could they provide? How does it improve their interaction with the data? What are they doing now that could be better if they had better tools? So know the users is very important, because often there's a tendency to kind of put things out there in a one-size-fits-all fashion, but all these different users, particularly as you democratize and move out to different types of users, they're all different. And so if don't neglect training. As you deploy these systems, they're going to need training, need to improve their data literacy so they can use it more effectively. Okay, number 4 is around monetization, and this is often, we see in our research, a top goal. I talked about it earlier. Organizations want to identify data assets, reports, dashboards, analytics that could be valuable and profitable if they made them available for business partners, customers, and or also employees. Don't forget that, particularly in very large organizations. Different subsidiaries, different divisions in the organization could use some of the things that your group may be collecting in terms of data or analysis that you're doing. So data-driven business models that leverage data assets for revenue-generating innovation. That's kind of the bottom line definition of what monetization is. It's helping that idea, and we certainly, as I mentioned, we see that more and more that organizations want to do that. They see that they're collecting all this data, particularly newer organizations that start from the get-go with a data-driven kind of business model. They're using it internally, but they see the opportunities for revenue generation by providing it to partners and customers. And so looking at, as I mentioned, the list, they want to be able to embed reports in an application that they may be delivering or services they may be delivering, provide better dashboards than maybe a canned application is providing, so providing additional value on top that can really improve a customer or partner relationship, providing unique analytics, because organizations are often collecting data and doing analytics that no one else has. And so this is an opportunity to provide it in applications and services. And then, of course, the problem is that often there's no way to monetize. They don't have the ability to do that. Or rather, I should say there's no one way to monetize. Not only do they have trouble doing it, which I'll talk about in the next slide, but there's not one way. So that, I guess what I'm saying is think about that you can do it in a simple way or do it in deeper analytics. And just to offer an example of manufacturer, they have supply chain partners, They could be providing views and analysis of the data. There may be choices there providing direct data access, but a lot of organizations don't want to do that for security and governance reasons. And it also can be difficult to support, so it's better to do it through dashboards, through a report, maybe through some sort of other user interface to be able to manage the user experience better. So the manufacturer wants to supply this so they can allow their partners, for example, to look at demand patterns, see how they could do process optimization, so share some metrics there, look at cost drivers and things like that. So these are some of the things that could be very, very valuable and profitable. So some monetization best practices. Well, first, some signs that you need it. Leadership wants a competitive differentiator. Organization needs new revenue streams, so they're trying to become more data-driven. And employees and business partners, they want different perspectives that they're getting with their own systems, and they can see what other groups in the organization, for example, might be able to provide in terms of understanding those key areas of cost drivers, performance, customer experience, and so forth. So some of the success factors, again, don't forget data quality and consistency, governing the data, particularly as you're starting to expose that data. And often it's a good idea to start small, start with a very focused area, and think through the issues of what you're going to be exposing in terms of the data. Knowing what your customers or your users, who are now your customers, want. So again, use those, kind of sit in, look at what they're looking at right now, what's their experience now, where could be improved, know that stuff. And then focus on delivering business value. So obviously, if you're trying to provide something that's going to be potentially revenue producing, think about what's the value. Don't give them something they already have, but give them something that's going to really help them innovate, give them a new insight that they haven't had before. Okay, number 5, often with the deployment of these kinds of systems with self-service BI and analytics, it starts to increase the number of data silos if there aren't enough data silos already. And often business applications have their own silos and so forth. So this is a continuing and growing problem in organizations for management, for optimization, to improve things. And often the first thing you see is that users are just frustrated because they can't get the single view that they're looking for, they thought they were going to get with the BI tool, because they're stuck in a silo. They can't answer the business questions they're trying to answer. And then from the enterprise perspective, governance, quality, scalability are problems. And often there are silos that are dedicated around spreadsheets and kind of simple tools, spread marks, great definition. I think TDWI's former analyst Wayne Eckerson, I think he quoted here, that's his term, but it's a great term because often spreadsheets can metastasize into these gigantic systems that are difficult to manage. They become silos. So to solve this, and these silo things can add problems. The reports or dashboards are isolated, hard to keep up to date. There's no holistic way to improve the governance, quality, and performance. So these kind of issues. So some of the success factors in overcoming silos, consider creating a web or cloud-based system that delivers the services through a browser. So basically centralize, try to bring all this together, and then use the power of a browser or web or cloud-based access to provide that user experience instead of having each one kind of cobbled together in their own siloed area. So this is a good alternative to consider, and particularly as you're digitally transforming and modernizing systems, something to be considering. And you can manage this all behind a secure firewall, so then you can get the authorization and authentication and so forth. You can provide trusted quality data from this perspective, and it helps in terms of balancing the self-service experience, so providing that personalization and flexibility and agility, but also have the enterprise systems to back it up. Okay, my final point is around dealing with costs. So TCO is rising, the TCO ROI is imbalanced, and again, we see this often with the spread of self-service systems and also cloud systems really, is that costs start to rise and it's unexpected, and so the whole democratization process kind of comes to a halt because the organization is concerned about this. Per user and subscription licensing can jump, like if you just get from a certain group of users, then add one additional user, suddenly get a big jump in price for cloud-based services, software as a service systems. Scaling up becomes difficult to handle the kind of workloads that users want. It's becoming more costly. And then in response, IT often sets limits and reduces the return on investment. So you don't want to get into that cycle, so you want to think about how to find an alternative. And embedded analytics can be helpful. So signs that you need it: business application costs are rising, users are frustrated, the cloud isn't really helping as much. As we see in our really research from Q3 last year, that 57% they go to the cloud to reduce IT costs, but it's still a big challenge. So it's not working that well. So some of the success factors in this area: first is just to have a plan. A lot of times we see organizations heading into the cloud or democratizing in a very piecemeal fashion. It's good to have a plan and be thinking about total cost of operation, ownership issues, and the calculations. But don't focus them too much on just the licensing and subscription, but think about all the other factors that contribute to rising costs. Improve visibility into those factors, and that can have an impact. So set up some good reporting and dashboards and so forth and metrics to be able to see, not, again, beyond just the licensing and subscription, but some of the other drivers. For example, data quality issues can raise costs considerably. So what kind of steps are being taken to improve that, and can you begin to align that or see how that is reducing costs? I think that, certainly that could be something that could be very visible in organizations. And then consider centralizing to maximize resources and manage costs. As I mentioned before in the number 5 point, this is a good way to provide better service to self-service users. It can also be a way to keep costs in line and avoid kind of the costs that rise through silos. Okay, so those are my 6 points, and just to kind of wrap it up and put it on one slide. So your organization is often undergoing digital transformations. This is a good time to modernize. You want to improve operational excellence. So you want to have things be more data-driven to be able to use analytics effectively and have that kind of continuous feedback loop. You're exposing data, so you want to improve customer engagement. You want to innovate through data and analytics monetization, so those often kind of going together, providing better services to customers and partners. Silos are a problem, and then costs often, because of the silos, are a problem. And so these are the kind of things that an embedded strategy and some of the issues around improving centralization can be helpful with. All right, well, that's my presentation. Thank you very much. And before we pass it back on, I'm going to do one more poll question. So what is your biggest challenge? Before we look at what are the drivers, let's think about challenges in developing a strategy to embed analytics and visualizations. Ensuring that users have trusted quality data, so the quality issue. Data silos make complete data access and integration difficult. Governance and security concerns. User training, thinking about also the data literacy needs to be expanded, and improved cost concerns. So will this increase or decrease TCO, or again, other, to provide that to us? Okay, let's take a quick look here. And yeah, this is a little bit more spread across. So 25% saying ensuring the users have trusted quality data is a big challenge. Silos are also a challenge, and often those go hand in hand. So often when you've got a lot of silos, quality problems occur. The largest percentage here, 37.5%, say governance and security. Yeah, that is a concern. User training got a 0, interestingly. And then costs are a concern for 12.5%. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, Jim, I'll pass it back to you. Oh, one more slide I was going to present. So, as I mentioned, this is based on a checklist. So you can access this checklist at the TDWI website. So here's the link to it. And good reading for you all, I hope. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Just a quick reminder to our audience, if you have a question, you can enter it at any time in the Ask a Question window. We'll be answering audience questions in the final portion of our program. Our next speaker is Kelly DeSantis with Wine Enterprise by Grape City. As a technical engagement engineer, Kelly enjoys helping organizations bring their data to life with business intelligence. She hopes her technical expertise can ease complicated daily tasks for others. In interaction with Wine's extensive customer base, Kelly's focus centers on helping end users view their data in the best way, either in dashboards or reports. By working with customers and getting a better sense of their full use case, database, and where their data is stored, Kelly provides demonstrations that illustrate how BI can benefit organizations. Hello, Kelly.
Hey, Jim. Thanks. All right, so like Jim said, I'm a technical engagement engineer for Wine Enterprise by Grape City, and I work closely with our entire customer base and product team on a daily basis. I work directly with customers to support their BI needs and wants, which our entire product roadmap is customer based, and I relay all customer feedback to our product team and leadership team. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit about Wine Enterprise and how I'm seeing organizations needing embedded BI more than ever because of the increased work from home environment. So Wine Enterprise is an enterprise BI solution which you can embed a suite of professional ad hoc reporting and distribution tools into your business application. So you have the ability to seamlessly white label and integrate BI dashboards and end user reports as part of your own SaaS application. Wine is a centralized platform for both technical and business users. And that being said, the platform is user-friendly, including drag and drop capabilities, but also powerful enough to create complex reports and dashboards. And ultimately, Wine provides the embeddable capabilities to create dashboards and reports, edit those from within the portal, view and export those documents, manage them in terms of permissions, and as well as distributing dashboards and reports on automated schedules. And all of this can be done regardless of the technical ability. And this being said, this is all done within the built-in modules for reporting, dashboarding, data governance, data federation, and all of those which I'll touch upon a little bit later here. So since you're here, you're definitely wondering and interested on why is embedded BI so important? And like I mentioned before, the world is in an odd state where many people are working remotely, and actually including myself and also the entire Grape City team. So what I'm seeing is customers are finding more of a sense of independence during this time and wanting to be more hands-on. So customers have been trying to find a way to ease this user adoption of BI for end users. And with embedded BI, users don't need to log into a separate system. And honestly, they may not even realize that they're navigating to a different platform, which really enables users to feel less hesitant with no additional learning curve to make the user adoption seamless. So having that smooth transition, it really encourages end users to start using BI and learning how to understand their data better. And with my experience with some customers, what companies do is they roll out Wine in teams or sections of the company. And once other teams are seeing the capabilities, customers decide to enable these BI capabilities for other teams as well, and doing so with no increasing costs with Wine. So I did want to mention something that Dave said about training is when we roll out Wine, organizations usually do this with teams. So we usually do training with a specific team to help them become experts with Wine and also provide them with best practices with embedded BI. So from there, then they can go back within their organization and do team trainings to increase data literacy and how to visualize their data in the best way. So with this, I've really seen this create a great sense of collaboration and allowing less technical users become more data literate and feel more comfortable with building and reading reports and dashboards and using BI capabilities overall. So embedding BI can increase your overall operational excellence. Since working from home has become the new normal to many, this has actually given companies the boost to integrate BI and embed BI within their applications. And what some of our customers have found is that working remotely has increased the workload for IT departments, and asking them to be the primary creators of dashboards and reports just isn't completely suitable anymore, and which has really drove the demand for self-service. I do want to note, though, this doesn't roll out the IT team. They can still create and edit dashboards, but they just may be more complex than a business user's, which would be maybe a more simple report or dashboard. But both parties now would have the ability to create dashboards and reports and to share these all within Wine. The reports and dashboards, like I mentioned, they can be set up on a scheduled distribution, allowing entire organizations in the know of either weekly, monthly, or even daily updates. And what this does is it increases inclusiveness within organizations, as complex and simple reports or dashboards can be shared much more easily. As customers have embedded Wine, they've been excited about the end user collaboration, but of course also interested in how the data itself is secured. So with Wine, it has a built-in multi-tenancy and data governance. So how we manage our multi-tenancy is with organization management, which includes a multiple level hierarchy of organizations and sub-organizations, where each organization can have its own set of permissions. And this organization management can be used for internal use, such as maybe separating the finance department, marketing department, IT, and so on. But it also can be used for SaaS applications in which organizations would be clients or customers. So each organization has users which are assigned to roles that contain permissions, and permissions being such as creating a report, creating a dashboard, viewing the resource portal, and other specific permissions for those roles. And based on the role permissions and organization the user is associated to, they will only be permitted to view or use their data, and also only view the portals they have permissions for. So for example, an end user may only be exposed to the documents portal to view and edit dashboards, but an admin role would be exposed to the admin portal, resource portal, and documents portal, which I'll touch upon in our architecture. So this allows all users the ability to be using the same solution, but also securing their specific data to their role. And what this does is it reduces data silos within an organization, because everyone will be using the same BI solution and also have the ability to share and collaborate on reports and dashboards. So with embedding BI, a key point is reducing the total cost of ownership and increasing your organization's return on investment. And a lot of our customers move to Wine, and they significantly reduce their TCO when it comes to a BI platform. And how they're able to do that is Wine's server-based licensing. And we don't charge per user, we don't charge per data size, we don't cap your data in any way. So ultimately, there is no hidden costs. Actually, I did want to note that one of our customers moved over to Wine because they were scaling up their client base, and their current BI costs were going to increase drastically. So they decided to switch, and recently after they went into production, they did let us know that with the licensing of Wine, they were able to bring back some employees that were laid off due to budgets. And with that being said, this licensing model is meant for you to increase your users and scale up as needed to lower your overall TCO, but also increase your overall return on investment. Before I move on here, I just did want to mention that that Wine already has the built-in support for multi-tenant deployment and how it can be deployed on either Linux, Windows, and Docker. And the embeddability capabilities are either via API, iframe, or div. So just a quick overview of Wine's architecture before I wrap up here. So the first step is obviously you want to connect to your data source, and this will be done within Wine's resource portal. And in this graphic here, you'll see some of our native connectors, and which we are always adding more to. So once you would connect to your data source, you'll create your data sets or semantic models to govern your data and to start visualizing it with either dashboards or reports. In doing so, using the built-in dashboarding and reporting modules. So end users can create dashboards and reports from our documents portal and also view dashboards and reports within this portal as well. And administrators will have access to the admin portal, which is used to manage multi-tenancy and some other UI settings as well. So these three front-end portals, admin, resource, and document portal, really enable users to have the full embedded BI experience with Wine. So to close things up with Wine Enterprise, please reach out and get in touch with us. We would be really happy to set up a personalized demo and talk about how embedding Wine can really assist your organization in becoming more data-driven. So on the screen, you can see the email to get in touch with us is wine.experts@grapecity.com, and our website is wine.grapecity.com. All right, thank you, and I'll hand it back over to Jim for some Q&A.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, let's move into our Q&A period now and answer some audience questions. I'm going to start with this question for Dave. We're facing total cost of ownership issues that are preventing us from expanding BI. However, users want more BI and analytics. There's no surprise. What works for other companies in reducing TCO through an embedded strategy?
Well, I think one thing is to look for hidden things, because often there are some obvious issues, and particularly if you're like moving to the cloud or something like that, there are systems issues, increased networking, bandwidth issues, more intensive data processing. As we definitely want to pay attention to those kinds of issues that often, in the rush to the cloud, companies don't think about. But the hidden issues are kind of often around concurrency, for example. Can it support the number of users? Maybe you're starting small, and so it seems as though the cost is low, but then as you kind of add more users and have to scale up and have more concurrent users, the licensing can become costly and often and is priced often in kind of tiers, and so you suddenly are in a new tier and it's very expensive. And so I think that there can be hidden costs around things like, particularly around scalability and concurrency, that are issues. But I think also with TCO, the other side of it is return on investment, the ROI, and so it's important to be able to think about it. What is it providing? What's the value? And sometimes with BI and analytics, it's difficult to track that down because it's sort of downstream, and this is where an embedded strategy can be helpful, even sort of the visibility of what is the value of this to a certain business operation or business process or use in an application. And so you want to be able to look at the cost of it in comparison with the values there. Some other things, like I mentioned, often distributed silos can be an issue, so think about how you might be able to centralize, and that's a way to keep control over the costs and manage a lot of issues that can drive costs, like too much complexity. There's a lot of duplicate data, poor data quality, overlapping tool functionality, so you can kind of get on top of that, and then also manage licensing costs even in more effectively through a centralized way. So those are some issues. And then I think, as I mentioned, the value and good to set up metrics around value and around total cost of operations. So, for example, like a big driver to provide BI analysis is speed to insight. It's reducing the latency. Well, you can set up metrics to see if it's effectively delivering on that, and is the cost in line, and then you can begin to manage, well, what do we need to do to increase speed to insight to address what executives and managers are looking for in terms of applying data to business questions and so forth. So that's a way, I think, to get just a more rational and clearer picture of it.
Okay, thanks. Kelly, our next question is for you. How can we improve our user adoption?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it really is a big area, and every organization is different. At least from my perspective, some organizations have teams that are willing to jump right in, but there's also some who are more hesitant. And I think the key thing to user adoption is really exposing the users to embedded BI tools and let them start playing around either with the designers or even just viewing sample reports or dashboards. So being a little bit biased here, the development of Wine was focused to be very intuitive and easy to create reports and dashboards. As I mentioned earlier, with drag and drop capabilities. But how our customers typically ease the user adoption is with the focused group training, something that Dave mentioned. And then the focus group can go back within their organization and train their peers or other teams. And we see this works well just because they're learning from within their organization. And once users see that their peers have the ability and they can create dashboards and reports, they tend to lose the hesitancy and become more willing to pretty much just willing to adopt BI and more open-minded.
Thanks. Dave, I'm going to focus this question for you. Monetization is something our corporate executives are very high on doing. However, we're concerned about supporting new types of users. What's the best way to get started? What's your advice?
Well, I think often with a lot of new projects, it's always good to define what you're doing. Start in kind of a smaller area. Start small. Think big, but start small. And look at, say, I think partner relationships are often good, where you have partners that you're working with, and maybe internally some of your managers have good information, good analytics, good dashboards, and things like that, that you think about, well, if we spread that out, say, to supply chain partners or to other kind of partners that we frequently work with when we go to market or go to the industry, this would be valuable to them in terms of particularly things like customer buying patterns, cost drivers, logistical kind of issues where we have some insight that they don't have that could be valuable to them. And so I think you have to think about it, from a business perspective, is how does this fit with maybe a strategy that we have to try to expand and deepen our partner relationships, and start there and see how that goes. It's obviously going to be a lot of trial and error, maybe working closely with them to make sure, because I mentioned before, you want to know your users. Because you're expanding to new kinds of user, so you don't, the one size fits all, or something that might be working inside might not be working effectively for these kinds of users. And then thinking about the data, I mentioned in my presentation about data quality, consistency, and governance. And certainly if you're doing anything that has to do with customer or consumer data, you need to be thinking about regulations, data privacy regulations. And so make sure that whatever you're sharing in terms of data access or through analytics and dashboards is properly governed. but also certainly consistency of the data, quality of the data. Those kinds of issues are very important if you're starting to expose this data or through dashboards or analytics, that data to users. So yeah, that, knowing what users want, and then defining the business value are key areas.
Kelly, I'd like you to take this last question. What are several best practices you can recommend to improve data literacy within our organization?
Yeah, sure. I guess so, kind of jumping on top of my last answer and talking about trainings, I think it's essential to have these types of internal training from within to not only explain how to use the BI platform, but also to read and analyze the data in the reports and dashboards. I mean, as it is known, everyone learns differently. But what I see from at least our customer base is that they use our built-in tooltips in which users can hover over visualizations and charts and know what field that data is coming from and the data point itself. So having either training sessions or tooltips within a platform, it really does depend on how the user and how your organization sees fit to improve your users' data literacy and how far you want to go with it. So it really is dependent on the organization, and they know their users the best.
Well, thanks. We're unfortunately out of time here, so let me take a moment to thank our speakers today. We heard from Dave Stoddard with TDWI and Kelly DeSantis with Wine Enterprise by Grape City. And thank you again to Wine Enterprise for sponsoring today's webinar. Please remember that we recorded today's webinar and we will be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. Feel free to share that with colleagues, and don't forget, if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, use the click here for a PDF line. Finally, I want to remind you that TDWI offers a wealth of information, including the latest research, reports, webinars, and information on business intelligence, data warehousing, and a host of related topics. So I encourage you to tap into that expertise at tdwi.org. And with that, from all of us here today, let me say thank you very much for attending. This concludes today's event.